Oh, good afternoon. Oh, I'm pleased to see that you have been able to meet me here. I'm so pleased to see the constituency, my constituency of the people of Fairfax County, and it seems that you have brought along some friends, unfamiliar faces to me. I have heard of all of the rumors and the gossip and the hushed conversations here about town, all wishing to know exactly what is happening there in that Capitol building. Well, I'm pleased that I may speak to you today with truth and candor. I think it should be well remembered what should happen this day, the 27th of May, 1776, here in Virginia. Oh, it will be celebrated, I promise you that. But I get ahead of myself, I'm afraid. Perhaps a proper introduction. I'm Colonel George Mason of Gunston Hall, Fairfax County. A great many of you I recognize, and some who are new to me. I should also say I'm a representative for those people of Fairfax County here at the 5th Virginia Convention. I know here in the capital city long there has been a wonderful conversation, rumors and gossip upon the lips, hushed conversations, loud pronouncements today. I am hoping that we shall see pronouncements more than anything. I am here to inform you exactly what we have done, a great and monumentous declaration we move forward with. But I suppose before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we must look to our past. I recognize, as many of you now know, it was upon the 15th of May, there in that Capitol building, just less than some 2 weeks ago, that we had a body of men gather there and vote unanimously to send a representative north to that Congress of Philadelphia with instructions to that respectable body to declare these united colonies free and independent states, absolved of all allegiance to and dependence upon the Crown and Parliament of Great Britain. Though we must recognize, though we celebrate it now, what a foreign concept it would have been to the great many of us not that long ago. It is not difficult for us to remember a time when we considered ourselves dutiful subjects of His Majesty's Crown, proud British subjects here of Virginia. And yet, even admittedly, some 10 years ago, we began to feel that crumble, and yet still in that time, there first with the Stamp Act, perhaps, when I first made my foray there into public writing, we found ourselves as subjects, discontent with some aspects of our government, and yet what is a body of people who has a government who are not displeased with their government at times? And yet it would continue to grow. We found ourselves some 18 months ago, stretched perhaps what we thought our limit, yet still considered ourselves dutiful British subjects, merely wishing to have our rights restored to us. Yet last May of 1775, bloodshed brought to our shores. And yet, though we have been at war now over a year, some 6 months ago, the idea of a new government, independency, was still a foreign subject to a great many, though increasingly so. And yet here, this year of 1776, something has shifted. Change has happened. The floodgates have opened. Perhaps we may think Thomas Paine in that Common Sense or Thoughts upon Government, there from one of the Adamses of New England, John, I believe. But here in Virginia, we continue such work. As I stated, there upon the 15th of May, we voted to send a representative there to Philadelphia. And yet here we still wait at the end of this month of May into June, waiting to see if independency will even be voted upon. But Virginia is not one to wait. No, instead we move forward. For it was upon that selfsame day that it was decided that a Bill of Rights and a Constitution must be created. A new government, if our old was gone, we must create a new. I admit, I was not there upon the 15th of May. A smart fit of gout detained me at home, I'm afraid. But upon my arrival, I was immediately appointed to that committee charged to create a Declaration of Rights and a Constitution. Now, for those of you who are familiar with our conventions, you'll be unsurprised to hear that our particular collection of men was, as is our custom, overcharged with useless members. And yet we almost immediately lost ourselves to 1,000 clashing and jarring proposals, when what was needed was a few men of ability and integrity whose country's interest was first in their hearts, who wished to establish a declaration of rights that might usher in a new age, that might declare for our posterity a greater world than we ourselves have known. Thus was my desire. And yet men lost themselves to 1,000 heterogeneous, jarring proposals. And I saw here in this tumultuous times there can be no more important subject than that of government. I retired to my beloved silence and solitude, there charging myself, if I were to solely write a declaration of rights for modern man, what might it include? What do we wish to provide for, to enshrine here in a new government fully formed? It were with that I attempted to put words to these ideas and wrote that all men are born equally free and independent and have certain inherent natural rights of which they cannot deprive or divest their posterity, namely the enjoyment of life and liberty with the means of acquiring and possessing property, pursuing happiness and safety, that all powers vested in and consequently derived from the people, that magistrates are the trustees and servants and at all times amenable to them, that government is or ought to be instituted for the common benefit and security of the people, nation, or community. Of all the various modes and forms of government, that is best which is most capable of producing the greatest degree of happiness and most effectually secured against the dangers of maladministration. And that whenever any government is found to be contrary or inadequate for those purposes, a majority of the community has the indubitable, inalienable, and indefeasible right to reform, alter, or abolish. Now, I find myself here going on. These were just the first 3, 10 all told. By my hand, 2 more with the assistance of Thomas Ludwell Lee. We have turned those over to that committee. And now here upon this day, we share with the public those articles now enshrined after some debate to be published for you, the people, tomorrow. This is a Bill of Rights for modern man, and one that is for you, the people. You ought read over it, debate it amongst yourselves. But as I sit here before you, I realize I came here to offer up what any answers or insights I might provide. I intended a dialogue, not merely to speak at you for a time, and thus I welcome you. Have you any questions or curiosities for me of this Declaration of Rights as its primary author, the tumultuous time of these last 10 years? If you wish to speak to me anything upon a personal or public matter, I should be happy to address those. Mr. Jones, I know that you have said that there are some here present that may have some curiosities for me.
Yes, indeed. And once again, thank you so much, Colonel Mason, for offering some of your time to chat with us. And we do have quite a few questions coming in for you. And friends, for all of you all viewing, I would just like to invite you all to write your questions or curiosities in the comment section for Colonel Mason, and we will do our best to ask as many as possible while we all are together. Now, Colonel Mason, I know you began to speak about some of these initial articles in the Declaration of Rights, especially the first 3. Can you speak a bit about the others and your viewpoint on them?
Oh, certainly. I believe at present, with the committee's additions, there are some 18 articles, but to speak to them as a whole, it is that idea that a Bill of Rights charged with 2 things, both in this and in previous Bills of Rights, at least of some iteration. This one being charged with placing reins upon the government, lest it should attempt to exercise arbitrary power, as we had seen Parliament and the King do here now currently and previously over the last few years, but instead to provide guards We have seen that in manners, a separation of powers for the first time ever betwixt the executive, legislative, and judicative, and of the former two to be made up of individuals elected into that position, who at regular and free intervals are then once again reduced to a private station, wherein they take part of the burdens they have placed upon others. Now, it were not just the ideas and ways in which we might see reins placed upon a government, lest it is an ending of hereditary positions or a division of powers internally, but perhaps more importantly, what should set this particular declaration aside from all the rest is its insistence upon certain privileges, certain liberties, certain rights promised to a people. Not just in the consideration of jurisprudence, as we have seen previously, the right to face one's accuser in a court of law, that right to an access to a trial by jury. No, this document instead has gone further than that. It is a document established for not only a new government, but one of a republican form, wherein the people hold the power, and thus what is insisted there that ought be theirs and never infringed upon by a government. And if we are to declare a people free in mind, in body, in heart, in spirit, thus we have insisted upon a freedom of the press as the greatest bulwark of liberty, a free exercise of religion. Those are some of those highlighted therein, but I should encourage the people to read over it in greater detail, for there is more contained therein than I wish to discuss word for word today. Are there any other curiosities or questions?
Yes, indeed, sir. Tina is curious, what article was the most difficult for you to write?
What article was the most difficult to write? I do not know which one was the most difficult to write, but I can speak to the one that has been most difficult since. Simple to write, but has been since affected by a great many of the other men, that being the first article. Insisting upon these ideas, long insisted to be true, concepts put forward by John Locke some 100 years ago, and yet we see already opposed here in Virginia, these ideas that man is born equally free and independent, and yet despite this insistence of life, liberty, and property, pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety, a great many who see a danger in that. And so in the writing of it, I found not difficulty, but instead the execution of it, I suppose. Other than that, there are others that I have had some issue with. Again, I found no difficulty in the writing, that the idea of being born a magistrate, a trustee, a judge is unnatural and absurd. Apparently my language was too frank and forthcoming, and they sought to soften my tone.
Well, thank you for that, Colonel Mason. And also, friends, for all of you all watching, you'll notice in our comment section a link so that you can explore the Declaration of Rights for yourself beyond our conversation today. And Colonel Mason, Gary is curious, how exactly do you plan to differentiate your new approach to American government from the British monarchy form of government?
Thank you. Gary, was it?
Yes.
Well, thank you, Gary. You seem to have the suspicions of our New Englander friends as well. There are those who are afraid that here in the South, so attached to our lands, we may wish to recreate an aristocracy, much as we had seen in England previously. No, I think that there are a great many things that we see as a separation. To take the study of antiquity, look even to the ideas that are being discussed here for our Virginia Constitution, still a division of houses, a bicameral legislature in that manner, one being a House of Delegates, the other perhaps even to take the name of Senate, there of that more classical bent, and to instead not discuss or study only from whence we most directly came, but those other societies, republics. For we wish no longer a monarchy or even a constitutional monarchy, but one, a government of a republican nature, wherein virtue shall be practiced not by a king in a singularity or even a small few in oligarchy, but instead that in which every member of society, contributing now then to the government, must so too practice that form of virtue. It mattered not how much under British rule, how virtuous the people were. It only mattered upon the virtue or lack thereof in corruption of Parliament. So instead we see an alteration, a shift in that concentration of how government may hold its power, and more importantly, how the people might hold its government responsible for such things. These things are promised in our Declaration of Rights, but much shall rely upon the construction of our Constitution, Gary, to see how we wish to execute it. And moreover, even once the Constitution is written, it shall be in the practice of the local courts and the like to see it actually come to fruition for the people. But it is something we must be mindful of. I am certain that we shall attempt to charter a course in a direction that bends us far away from such temptations, but one never knows what the future may hold.
And Colonel Mason, speaking of the future, you stated that all men are born equally free and independent, and you and many of the men in the convention hold slaves, people in bondage. So how exactly was this received within the convention? And when we speak about the future, what are you seeing in regards to that?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Jones. One that was, of course, upon the lips of many upon the first announcement of that very first article. Almost immediately it was asked of former Mr. Secretary Robert Carter Nicholas, well respected, that all men are born equally free and independent. And what if the slaves should hear? Echoed there within that chamber. What if the slaves should hear? There are those, young Mr. Randolph, a man who's already distinguished himself here, not only due to his family name, but to the respect of his countrymen, quick to abolish such thoughts. As slaves are not contingent members of society, they can never confuse such a document as pertaining to them. Slaves are first and foremost property. Property has no access to these rights. Property cannot declare an insistence of life, of liberty, of themselves. This table cannot sue for its freedom. A horse cannot be charged with treason for riding an enemy officer across the field. A home may not be charged with murder for falling in on us. Therefore, they, as property, how might they ever confuse such things as applying to them? And yet a slave may be charged with murder. A slave may be punished and lashed. A slave's life may be taken. It is not simple that they are our property and not but. No, upon the reading of that first article, there were a great many men, I know not if a majority, who saw the reality in it. That though it were not reflective of the world around us, is it not true to a philosophical standpoint? We all equally come into this world tabula rasa. The slave being insisted upon not by nature but by law that he is a slave. And yet, no matter how equally we come into this world, no matter how freely we go out of it, the Virginia around us, that is not true. There are those who decry to state something would be in its essence a lie. They were more fearful for their property, I believe, and yet their point taken. Much debate had gone back and forth, and though I do not believe it will be contained in perhaps the committee draft soon to be published, ultimately I imagine that there shall be an addition. All men are by nature equally free and independent and have certain inherent rights of which, when they enter a state of society, when they enter a state of society, well, there we should enshrine that idea. Mr. Randolph Force put that slaves, not being contingent members of society, consecutive members of society, they are property and not right. The men should be happy to ratify something, I have little doubt. But as to the future, Mr. Jones, I'm afraid I am uncertain. We must recognize that countries, unlike you or myself, we shall enjoy our just rewards or punishments in our next lifetime. Nations shall exist upon this globe. No, they must meet their just rewards upon this globe. And therefore, through an inevitable chain of cause and effect, national sins will be met by national calamities. Yet I must confess, this institution, wicked as it may be, is perhaps our greatest weakness. I think it does us no great favor to examine the subject too freely at present. Another question, please.
I appreciate you expanding and explaining that for us, Colonel Mason, that you answered quite a few of the points that Tina was curious about. Now, Colonel Mason, we heard that you refused to attend the Continental Congress in Philadelphia. Can you tell us why you made that decision?
Yes, I'm afraid that several of the gentlemen well respected here throughout Virginia had asked me upon multiple occasions, even my good friend, longtime friend, longtime neighbor, longtime colonel, but of course now general of this Continental Army, General Washington, early on wrote to me requesting that I might step up as a representative of the people of Virginia there in Philadelphia. I refused him. I asked again by other gentlemen of note, even Mr. Speaker, late Peyton Randolph of this city of Williamsburg, insisting, why, Colonel Mason, you hold the opinion of many other Virginians and you represent yourself well. I can agree to the former, I'm uncertain of the latter. But what I insisted upon them, it were not for lack of support of the cause, it were not for lack of the love of my countrymen, but it were for the love of my family. For when first asked, it were not but 2 years after the loss of my wife, our youngest being but 5 years old. I cannot imagine being so far from Gunston Hall as to make my way to Philadelphia. No, I insisted to Mr. Speaker, to those other representatives I called, and begged them to reflect upon the duty that I owe to my poor little family of orphans, to whom I must now play the part of father and mother both. My wife's loss too fresh in my heart, the necessity of my home too great a calling. Now, I suppose perhaps there is a day when my youngest shall be old enough, and if I am called, I may serve. But I must say at present, if you find Colonel George Mason there in Philadelphia, something great, something terrible, or something a bit of both has happened.
I see. Now, we have time for a few more questions, Colonel Mason. I know that you have quite a few matters to attend to, but there were some curiosities about your time at Gunston Hall from Abby and Austin, and they just want to know, have you had time to really enjoy your moments there, and what do you think about living there?
I thank you so much, Abby and Austin. I am always, it fills my heart with joy to speak upon my most beloved of Gunston Hall. I know that I may have a reputation at times of being short in temper, stern in countenance, sour in demeanor, curmudgeonly in company. to be an unsociable creature. But all of these things, I must insist, must come from individuals who have never met me there in my home. For to be surrounded by my home, by my family, those rooms that I love so very much, my gardens upon there, the Potomac side, those trees upon the backside. I should not wish to give it away, but if you ever make your way there to Gunston Hall, stand there, not upon the riverside, but the landward side, and look out amongst the trees that I have planted there. Brings me delight, any who wish to do that. It is a home gloriously finished, too. Buckland is the man I ought thank for upon such considerations, but upon all of that, it is a place that fills me with joy. My family is there. My wife's grave, though still filling me with a melancholy, allows me to walk with her every day, to make my way there to the family grave. There are a great many things there. I have my different fields planted, sores there in Log Town. I have a distillery there established for the enjoyment of peach, persimmon, apple brandies. If you wish, if you come, I promise to charge you with a punch bowl. I pledge you, and you shall pledge me, and together we shall drink in merriment. I thank you for turning me to such fond thoughts.
We appreciate your fond thoughts. Now, hopefully this next curiosity, you can have some fond memories as well. But Tina, she acknowledges that sometimes working on committees can be difficult. And so we're a bit curious about your business in crafting the Declaration of Rights. And Tina is curious, how well did you get along with the other members who worked on the Declaration of Rights?
I thank you, Tina, for such a memory. I should not say that any thought of committee ever brings much joy to my heart, although I suppose the enjoyment I have been now removed from committee. I'm still part of the committee, but I am not there at present, and thankful for it. No, I mentioned earlier that our committee was, as is our custom, overcharged with useless members. Now, please, mind you, this is not to be to the condemnation of any one or individual member and his uselessness. I should say necessarily. I had not opportunity to meet or know all of the gentlemen, and let us confess, the law on numbers insists wherever two politicians may be gathered, at least one of them is going to be useless and is thus obligated so. No, it were not the integrity of the men. There are a great many minds there, though facing a great many different ways, and many heads as a hydra upon any one of them. No, instead it was the sin of its sheer size, Tina, that I found most oppressive. As I have already confessed, I am a man who has a strong preference for silence and solitudes, the blessings of a private station, my beloved Gunston Hall, and thus there to find myself upon all sides attacked by a great many politicians were the frustration of mine. I would have been content for a small committee of some 3 to 5 members to construct such a declaration, and yet that thus was not the case. No. Instead, at the time of my appointment, as I had illuminated earlier, I was not there the very first day. Many of the members of the committee had already been called. At the time of my appointment, over 30 men sat upon that committee. Ultimately number some 36, I believe, if that number being correct. A third of the convention in its entirety sat there upon committee. I need not tell you little was accomplished upon that consideration. And so for the other members of that committee, I have many that I have known for some time and hold great respect for. There are those who I wished were there. That the young Mr. Jefferson, having some talents and only counting him as an acquaintance maybe in the last year, Richard Henry Lee, a friend and ally of a great many years, but instead, alas, again, much like Mr. Jefferson is north there in Philadelphia. And yet, I think it offered up an opportunity. There was a young man enjoying his very first session, a freshman representative from the people of Orange, I believe, Mr. James Madison, not to be confused with the Reverend James Madison of the college, this being the secular, not the sacred James Madison. He, having been a soft-spoken young man, and yet insight in his mind far outpasses my own, and I should be anxious to see where his future may come. So, at your suggestion, Mr. Jones, I ended it there upon a complimentary note, as opposed to how many other things I may say upon committee and the like.
I see. Thank you, Colonel. Well, speaking of the future, Emily is a bit curious about your future, or at least where you see your future heading. Emily asks, where do you see yourself being in 20 years? Given the hopes and possibilities that you've shared and expressed with us today, do you see yourself living a very public life or perhaps a very private life?
Oh, you quite know well, Emily, where I might land upon such things. No, I'm a man who's desirous of entering once again into that retirement that I have long enjoyed there at Gunston Hall. I should suppose, where do I see myself for the future, at least in the immediate? I am still here upon this committee, and, as I had stated, a sense of honor calls to one in tumultuous times that there can be no more important subject than that of government, and thus I find myself here, having committed a great deal of work upon that Declaration of Rights. Next, we must turn our sights to a Constitution here for Virginia. Once again, if I am able to trust the other members of that committee, I should be happy to turn the work over to them, although I should say I'm impatient, and if I find that they are doing an insufficient job and I see myself doing a far better job as its author, I shall once again take up the pen for such purposes. After that, I shall serve at the behest of the people of Fairfax County. If they wish to elect me into what we may hope is our new government, in what we may hope is a free and independent Commonwealth of Virginia, time may only tell. We still wait with bated breath what may be decided there in Philadelphia. Yet, I hope it is not too prideful to imagine a future wherein we find ourselves at peace, where we find ourselves enjoying our independency. And if we find ourselves in such a time, I should enjoy my home of Gunston Hall. I shall enjoy my family and my fields about me. I had already entered once into retirement and found myself once again dragged back out of it. I hope with my heart of hearts that once I enter once again into a second retirement, that nothing should pull me out of it again. But thus is the wishes of the man who sits before you now, and time shall be the decider of most things, not me.
Thank you for that, Colonel.
But if there are any other questions, I should be happy to address.
Of course. Well, we do have time for one final question for you, Colonel Mason. And we all were just curious, is this Declaration of Rights just for Virginians? Well, yeah, I suppose, yes. And it says there, even before the very first article, that it is for the people of Virginia. But you pose a curious question, I suppose. This declaration, in and of itself, is it for the people of Virginia? Well, yes. It is the 5th Virginia Convention that has created it, that might ultimately ratify it, much too as a constitution that shall follow thereafter shall be a constitution for the people of Virginia. But I suppose, if we take into consideration a larger understanding of it, I suppose that this Virginia Declaration of Rights may have a greater sphere of influence, a greater cause than just the people of Virginia. After all, these ideas contained therein that all men are born equally free and independent, that we have rights to life, to liberty, to property, to pursuing happiness and safety. These ideas are not proprietary. They were no more taken or stolen from Locke, in that they were learned from Locke, grown upon. And the philosophers since then, these are ideas, these are hopes, these are liberties, these are rights that we wish to pass down to our posterity. But they are not Virginian alone. A Marylander might read it and feel within their hearts, their breast,
a resounding truth in Virginia's declaration. And in that way, though it need not apply directly to them, instead may they apply it to their own government. May this be applied to the people of the Carolinas. Might those men of Philadelphia read it, of Massachusetts, find some truth in it, if not in its entirety, at least in some small part. Now, I suppose while this Declaration of Rights is Virginian, the soul that it contains is far larger. It may be applied to Virginians or those here upon this American continent, but who is to stop a man of France from reading it and finding some truth therein? And so I thank you, Mr. Jones. You are quite right to illuminate such a consideration. This document in and of itself shall be ratified for the people of Virginia. But thus is the power of words, of ideas. Philosophy, much like religion, cannot belong to one man. It shall stretch out as ever far it may need, and may improve upon itself. It is upon that consideration that I do believe that I shall take my leave of you good people. Good to see some of those familiar faces there. I hope that I may soon congratulate you upon American independency. Together that we might celebrate American liberty. Happiness and prosperity are well within our reach. But to attain it, to preserve it, must always rely upon our own wisdom and virtue. And to that end, friends, if we are ever to meet again, I promise I should forever be your most humble and obedient servant, Colonel G. Mason, Gunston Hall, Fairfax County. I bid you good day.
To our viewers and supporters, thank you. We also want to let you all know that over the summer, we'll be working hard behind the scenes to bring you new and exciting content when we return with live programs this fall. But you can continue to watch Trades Tuesday live streams all summer long. And please be sure to tune in for Us, Past, Present, Future, which is a national conversation series exploring the vital intersection of current events, our shared history, and the enduring promises of America. These live streams will occur on the third Saturday of each month. Thank you all so much again for joining us over the past year. Now, there's a lot happening at Colonial Williamsburg this summer, and we hope you'll take the time to come visit us in person. Take care, and we'll see you soon again.